Assalamualaikum and a very good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Open Science webinar series brought to you by USM Library. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Cik Ramlah, Senior Librarian at University Science Malaysia, will be your moderator for today's webinar. We would like to welcome our special guest for today's webinar, Ms. Goh Suni. How are you, Ms. Goh?
Fine, thank you very much, Cik Ramlah.
Yeah. Hopefully everything is going well and smoothly on your side. We can't wait to listen to your presentation today. We would like also thanks to all the viewers live from our YouTube channel and Facebook page. I can see that we have participants from various institutions, not merely from Malaysia, but also from abroad. Please introduce yourself through the chat box and enjoy this webinar. Before we start, I want to make a few announcements. All the participants will be given e-certificate and CPD points for USM staff. You just need to fill in our feedback form. The link will be given towards the end of our session. Meanwhile, at any time during this session, you can ask any question related to the topic today by typing QUSTION followed by your question in the chat box. Next, our committee will compile them all and a relevant question will be brought forward to our speakers during the Q&A session. For your information, a recorded version of this webinar will be available and you can just go to YouTube or Facebook to view this webinar later. Now, we have come to our main agenda, whereby we're going to listen to the tips and guidance from our distinguished speakers. But before that, let me introduce Ms. Goh. Ms. Goh Suni is a Deputy Director and Team Lead for the Research Data Management Team from the Nanyang Technological University Library in Singapore. She currently leads the team in the strategizing, planning, and provision of RDM support services that support the NTU research community. She was involved in the development of the University Research Data Policy and the University Data Management Planning DMP template in 2015 together with other university stakeholders. The NTU Research Data Policy and NTU DMP template were launched in 2016. The Institutional Open Access Research Data Repository was subsequently launched in 2017. She is currently involved in the development of research data classification, closed repository for sensitive research data, RDM e-learning modules, undergoing data repository certification, and is conducting DMP submissions data analysis to address institutional research data related risk. She is a regular presenter to research data and open science supporting communities in the region. Topics included building capabilities for RDM services, institutional repositories, and sensitive data, and etc. She is also one of the co-chairs for the Libraries for Research Data Interest Group in Research Data Alliance. Therefore, without further ado, I would like to call upon Ms. Goh Suni to proceed with her presentation entitled Kickstarting Open Science with Institutional Research Data Support. Please welcome.
Thank you very much, Cik Ramlah, for the very kind introduction. First of all, I'd like to thank University Science Malaysia for this opportunity to share with you our NTU's research data management experience. And of course, I'd like to thank the NTU for the wonderful support that has been given to RDM services. Yeah, so without further ado, let me just find out a little bit more from you, who you are. If you could join this slido.com. If you have a mobile phone, you could open your QR code reader, scan the QR code on the screen, and then you can participate in this poll to tell us whether you are a librarian, a researcher, research administrator, or others. if you are not using a mobile phone, please feel free to type in the the URL on your internet browser and put in the code I love data 21. It looks like we have quite a number of librarians who have responded so far. So to share with you, I'm also a librarian. So we formed the research data management team under the scholarly com group sometime in late 2014. And for those of you who are belonging to other categories, yeah, I would very much love to hear from you about what we're going to share today as well. So thanks very much for your participation. I think that gives us a good idea of who we have in today's group. So the next question that I would like to ask would be, what do you hope to achieve from today's session? Now that we have some idea of who we have in the audience today, regardless of whether you are a librarian, a scientist, a researcher, or research administrator, or belong to others, can you just put in a few words? What do you hope to achieve from today's session? Looks like you may need some time to think about that. No worries. You can always put in your questions in the chat box. Yeah. Okay, so we have got some responses streaming in. Understanding RDM activities, what is research data support, how to support open science, to gain additional info, awareness and understanding about RDM, open science, how to initiate institutional data repository. So yeah, I think that gives us some good idea of what could be your objectives of attending today's session. To get an overview on supporting research for my institution, know better on open science. Yeah, okay, so that gives us a very good idea. So let's hope that we can cover these various aspects in today's sharing session. So that will lead us to this segment about my sharing of the research data management landscape in NTU. So I'm going to share with you a quick overview. So it is really very heartening, I would say, that the university has since 2016, I would say, within these 5 years, and to come to this part of the milestone of the journey where research data management is recognized as an important aspect of the research ecosystem. So if you look at this university web page screen capture, you will see that on this university research page itself, it does not just present information about its research achievements in terms of collaborations, projects, and information about funding, but there is a very important box here, which is research data management. So this is really a big milestone to me, because when we first started, RDM was definitely not in the picture or in the landscape or ecosystem yet. So today, just this year, the university had a revamp of the website, and it's really very reassuring to know that RDM has been recognized as an important piece of the ecosystem here. So if we were to do a deeper dive into the website, you will see that under research data management, there are a few key elements in the research ecosystem here. So for RDM, the key elements would include research data policy, research data classification and handling guide, the data repository which the library is managing. The other last but not important, but not least important aspect would be the data management plan. So these are various critical elements that help to put together the research data management ecosystem for the university. So I'll be sharing with you a little bit about each and every one of these elements in terms of the experience that we have gained so far in these 4 to 5 years. So in order to build the ecosystem to come up with these key elements, we will need to be very clear about the stakeholders whom we would be working with. So in the NTU, the departments whom the library works closely with for research data management services would include the Research Support Office that takes care of grants management. They are an important party to work with because they own the university research data policy. They ensure that the policy is in tune, is aligned with the funders' research data related requirements. The other department which we work closely with is the Research Integrity and Ethics Office. So they have definitely a big interest in research data management services. If you look at the title on the right-hand side, it says Research Integrity Through Open Science and Fair Data by Spark Europe. So I would recommend you this reading if you like to know how open science and fair data play a big role in research integrity. So if you belong to institutions that have got any units or parties who are interested in research integrity, please go speak to them, and I think they would be potentially big stakeholders or partners to work with for research data services. The other important department whom we work closely with is the university IT department. We work with them for the setting up of our data repository, for the incorporation of the data management plan template in the university research system together with the research support office and any other infrastructures that we are riding on. The other group that we work with would be Research Integrity Committee. This group is a group of faculty members who represent the schools that they come from to discuss research integrity matters. So this is not a department, but is committee with the school representatives. I think they could be potential ambassadors in the endeavors, aspirations that we want to pursue. And of course, colleges, schools, and institutes. For example, in the university's medical school, there is a good research practice office whom we work closely with. They do have an interest in research data management services and of course, open science. Last but not least, the data producers themselves. So we have faculty members who are PIs, principal investigators, supervisors of research projects, we have research staff and students who are involved in research activities. So this group of data producers would be a big group that we will also need to be engaged in. So a little bit about the milestones. In NTU, we started in 2016 when we launched the research data policy. So it's a university research data policy. Just a few days ago, I was having a chat with USM librarians about research data policy in Malaysia. So I understand that in Malaysia, there are some discussions about coming up with a national level research data policy. So that's great. It's great to have some kind of discussions and movement toward having a policy, whether national level or institutional level. So for my university, we have it at the university level. That 2016 is also the year when we launched the data management plan template. So it is specific to our university. We came up with the template. In Singapore, we don't have a national level data policy or a national level template. So for NTU, we feel that it is very important to have a policy and a template for the DMP. So we came up with one for our university. So that very year, we also started to conduct DMP workshops, which I think is an important service because that is the time when people need to start submitting DMPs in the in-house research information management system. So it will be good to provide additional help to those who may be interested to find out more. In 2017, we launched the University Research Data Repository, and I think that was the time when we got ourselves busy with data curation and working with data depositors. We started to do learning as we move on. Yeah, so it was quite an exciting time, you know, as we moved on from having the policy first and then the platform for open access data sharing. In 2017, the university formed the Research Integrity and Ethics Office. So that was a great time to find a new partner, a new stakeholder to work on research data management matters. 2018, the medical school started to have the Good Research Practice Office. So it was a great time to say, hello, let's talk about some of the common agenda, common goals, common aspirations we might have that we want to collaborate. So another exciting year, we looked at a new version of the DMP because after 1 year of experience with DMP, looking at the DMP submissions, we thought that some questions could be tweaked. So we came up with a new version for the DMP template in 2018. In 2019, the University Internal Audit Office got very excited about what we're doing, and they thought that it's time to look at how to measure some of these efforts are helping to mitigate enterprise risks, especially those that are to do with research integrity and research data loss. So yeah, it was a good experience because then it gave us a lot of impetus to work on some of the potential gaps that we could be looking at. So I think that was a very useful time to look at the findings, and then that actually led us to review some of the services and what we say in terms of our DMP templates in the workshops, how we're going to further augment the education for our data producers. And this is where we are now, 2021. So we are right now going through a certification process for our data repository. We are looking at Core Trust Seal. We are developing a customized university RDM e-learning. It's customized because in our university, we have the data policy. So we want to tell people what are the requirements, the roles and responsibilities of people in regard to data retention, etc. So in this year, just this year, the university rolled out the data governance policy, and actually we have to work on the closed repository and research data classification together with the rolling out of the university's data governance policy, because there is a need to see, oh, okay, so there are various levels of sensitivity in research data. So what do we do with the more sensitive ones? All right, so the last bullet point is about DMP data analysis for risk reporting, because we want to look at what the DMPs are saying in terms of where the data is kept, and we would like to understand better if the current infrastructure is sufficient to help with the compliance, say for the 10-year retention period. So I think that is really very insightful that we are currently embarking on. So just very recently, the research data management team in the library has been reformed, reorganized, and now we have an open science team. So I'm now leading the open science team. So it has broadened from RDM to open science. I would like to share with you this RISE framework, R-I-S-E. It's not R-I-C-E. So it's Research Infrastructure Self-Evaluation Framework. So why do I want to introduce you this? In NTU, we were looking at this framework and we were doing a self-assessment using this framework, because this framework is asking us to look at what we have and what we would aspire towards in terms of building capability. So if you look at this framework, the center circle is based on research data lifecycle. It starts with data management planning. So that's the early stage when you have yet to start on the data collection, data analysis, etc. So at the beginning, at the top of the circle is the planning stage. So do we have that? So we were looking at where we are. Are we there in terms of have we achieved what we want to achieve for that planning stage? So that is where we are now in terms of looking at the DMP submissions to have a better understanding of how people are planning for their projects, and to see whether they are also looking at some of the best practices in terms of the planning stage. The next box is active data management. So we were looking at, do we have that kind of infrastructure and services? So in fact, because of this self-assessment, we find that we are not doing enough for this green box, active data management. So we thought that we need to look at other university platforms to help people out with this aspect. So we are currently exploring a few platforms with our university IT department. The other aspects would be appraisal and risk assessment. So that is when people need to make an assessment to see what they want to preserve. So that leads us to the next box, preservation, as well as to the next box, access and publishing and discovery. All these are related because it may not be possible, feasible, or practical to make open access everything. So you need to make an assessment of what is needed to justify what you say in your publications. what is enough to help facilitate the reuse and others to build on your work. So you need to come in and do an appraisal to see what is valuable for preservation, what is useful for others to build on your work, reuse. Like, for example, you may need to put in some data documentation so that when others discover your work, when they want to reuse your work, they know how to go about using your data sets. So if you look at the top of the framework, is the RDM policy and strategy. So do we have that? So we asked ourselves, have we achieved what we wanted to achieve with the policy and the strategy? So as we move on, in fact, over the 4 years, we have made a few updates to the policy because we want to make sure that things are clear and we are consistent with the latest university and funders requirements. The business plans and sustainability is important because we need to make sure that we have enough resources to maintain the platforms, to improve the platforms, and to come up with new platforms, and of course the headcounts as well. At the bottom of the circle will be training and advisory services. So we were asking ourselves, based on this framework, have we achieved what we wanted to achieve for training and advisory services? What else could we be looking at if we have other aspects that we also want to take care of? Yeah, so I think for those of you who are looking at how your institution could be planning for research infrastructure in terms of services and infrastructure, you can actually look at this framework as a basis to look at what you have now and what are your aspirations as you move down the road. For NTU research data policy, maybe before I start sharing with you about our university research data policy, I may like to invite you to tell me more about your case. Does your institution have a research data policy? Looks like it's a no for most cases, but I understand from USM librarians that Malaysia is looking at developing a national level one. So I think that would be a fantastic move to make as well. Yeah, so thanks very much for sharing. Okay, so let me share with you a little bit about the NTU's research data policy. Because it is not a national level one, it is a university specific one. So we could actually be a little bit more explicit about things such as roles and responsibilities. And we are so explicit that we even say that, oh, okay, for the college and schools, what are the responsibilities? For the library, what is the responsibilities? Then the PI schools, yeah. And because it's university specific, I think when it is so explicit about the roles and responsibilities, it is also very useful when we plan for resources to help further with the achievement, the implementation of the aspirations of the policy. For example, there is this section pertaining the library's role. So the library's role is articulated as such. provide training and advice on research data management, including metadata description, DMP preparation, copyright, and licenses. Develop, revise, and maintain the NTU DMP template. Develop and manage the NTU data repository for submission of final research data. So it's very clear what the library's role is in regard to research data. It is extremely useful. The policy has been extremely useful when engaging data producers, because there is this section that says that PIs have overall responsibility for research data management. PIs will need to submit and update the DMP as and when there are major changes to the DMP. The PIs are to make available final research data and data documentation. This helps us a lot because as librarians, when we work with data depositors on the data repository, we point them to this line that says, don't just dump in your files. People don't understand it. So please try to contextualize what you are making available on this repository. Tell others how to go about assessing, making sense of your data files, explain your folder structures, provide README, etc. So we refer people to this line when we work with them on the data deposits. And there is even a mention about the timeline. So no later than the first online publication of the article or 12 months after the project end date, whichever is earlier. If people are not able to make their research data open access, provide statement and justification, especially in the DMP. Because in the data management plan, there is a question that asks about data access restrictions and to provide a little bit more information. For example, if there is a collaboration agreement with third parties that prohibit data sharing, that could be part of the justification, or non-disclosure agreements, or you are planning for a patent, or etc. So that could be explained in the data management plan. There is this reminder not to hand over the rights of the research data when they work with, say, for example, publishers. The policy helps in data curation guidelines and policies for the data repository as mentioned. So there is this section that is dedicated to deposit. So if it is appropriate and useful to have the research data deposited on the subject-specific repository, that is totally acceptable according to the policy. All right, so that is mentioned here. The other important point about this section is that if you have any sensitive research data, they must be stored in a separate secure system so that it will not be made open access. All right, so the policy reminds people about these two aspects for data sharing. And this is related to what I just shared. Yeah, so if they are able to share any non-sensitive research data on the repository, the recommended data sharing license would be the Creative Commons license, CC BY NC. So that is the default license that is in the repository itself. When the data depositor creates a new record for his or her own data set, the default data sharing license that pops up on the screen is Creative Commons license CC BY NC. However, the depositor could change that according to perhaps his or her obligations. For example, if the depositor had reused someone else's codes that comes with an MIT software license that says that you must use back the same MIT software sharing license, then you can change the license in the NTU data repository to that other license. Okay, this is the challenge, you know, when we are working with research data services. I remember sharing the Padlet, asking for questions that you might want to bring up to discuss for today's webinar. So there was a question put in the Padlet that says, so what is NTU's biggest challenge when it comes to open science or research data management? So it's about the carrots and sticks. Yeah, it is not nice to be looking at sticks. You know, it is better that people are intrinsically motivated to look at all these aspects of open science or research data sharing. So maybe I'll share with you a little bit about the current system in terms of the carrots and sticks that NTU has when it comes to RDM. So for the submission of DMP, it is like this. If the DMP is not submitted for a research project, the research project grant money will not be released for the project. So this is maybe you can think about it as a carrot and stick that is built into the ecosystem when it comes to data management planning. The other aspect would be the enterprise risk management. So the university thinks that research data is a valuable asset that needs to be managed well. So where it's non-sensitive, please share it. If it's sensitive, please safeguard it. So there is a need then to look at the measures of how well we are doing in terms of mitigating risks when it comes to research data. So just very recently, there is this development of some indicators for research data. The other aspect would be when it comes to internal auditing, it does help to raise some, create some awareness, and I think that also draws people's attention to the quality of the data management planning, for example. So as we move along these various elements in the ecosystem, there is this awareness within the group that is helping to develop the infrastructure and the services that there is a need to look at areas such as sensitive research data, data retention. According to the university research data policy, there is a 10-year minimum of 10-year data retention period required. There is a need to also look at user education specific to areas such as sensitive research data management. So a little bit about data management plan. Now, may I invite you to take part in this poll? The submission of a DMP is compulsory for my institution and or funder. Yes or no? Is it compulsory for your case? Looks like it's about 3/4 saying no and about 1/4 saying yes. Yeah. So yeah, thanks very much for your participation in this poll. So when you look at data management plan, for those of you who are saying no, yeah, it's then about the benefits of the DMP and how following best practices could be helpful for them. If it's a yes, then it will be useful to look at what kind of requirements they might have in regard to the DMP submission. For example, any required templates or elements that they need to cover. Next question would be, my institution or funder provides a DMP template? Yes or no? Regardless of whether it's compulsory, does your institution or funder provide a template? Looks like there are more yeses than nos. Yeah, thanks very much for your participation. So if you have a template, you may want to look at what kind of services and support are surrounding that template. Is the template aligned with, will it be aligned with the upcoming national level research data policy? Now it's half-half. Yes and no. Yeah. So thanks very much for sharing that. So it's a half-half, yes and no. So for NTU, yes, we have a template. If no, you could consider what kind of templates are there out there, which I will cover very shortly as well. So a little bit about how NTU has benefited from having a DMP or having a DMP template. Okay, because NTU has its own template, we could actually point to people about the university's research data policy requirements. For example, the 10-year retention period and the need to have the sensitive data in a separate secure platform. And there is actually a need to update the DMP. Yeah. So it is very interwoven to the requirements of the university policy. And because it's a university template, it could actually incorporate the university's data governance policy, which has got a very clear data classification table. So when we design or update the DMP template in regard to the question like, do you have sensitive data? Okay, we ask them in the NTU DMP template, do you have sensitive data? Yeah, so we point them to the university's data classification table. Then they make a decision. They may have some data that are sensitive. They may have some that are less sensitive, and they may have some that are that can be made open access. So if they have some sensitive data, there would then be a need to look at the measures that can be put in place to safeguard the sensitive research data. And because it's a university DMP template, we directly link them to the repository to tell them that after your project is over, for non-sensitive data, put it in the university repository. So let me just give you the details of the question, the DMP question on the sensitive data. So it looks like this. It is actually the question 5 of the template that asks, please check the relevant response, whether my project does not involve the use of sensitive data or my project involves the use of sensitive data. If my project involves the use of sensitive data, okay, please select any of the following. Whether it is sensitive because it contains human subject identifiable data, or it is of commercial in confidence nature, or it is national security related, has patent or commercialization potential, or is sensitive because of other reasons. So the first question is any sensitive data, yes or no? Then it follows up with why do you say it's sensitive if you say so. Then the next question is how sensitive it is. So this is not based on your own gut feel. It is actually based on the university's data governance policy that has got a classification table. So we have mapped it through examples of research data that could belong to any of the 4 levels. Level 1, low or no sensitivity, up to level 4, high. So we have an intranet that gives them a list of examples for each of these levels that is aligned with the university data governance policy. And the last part, the last box is about what measures. Okay, what measures are you putting in place to safeguard that? So some of you have indicated that you may not have institutional or funder templates for your DMP. You could look at the DMP tool. I'm sure this is not new to some of you. Yeah, you can create an account, go in there. First, look at whether your institution is affiliated with the DMP tool. If not, you can actually just sign up with your email address and look for a template that you think makes most sense for your case, because there are some templates that are subject specific. So yeah, you could actually do a comparison. Some are more granular, some are pretty generic. A little bit about the DMP support that we provide. So for NTU Library, we used to conduct monthly data management plan writing workshops. Because we have been running that for quite a few years. So this year, we have actually reduced the frequency to quarterly, and most of the people who come are the new research project team members that are assigned by their project supervisors to come to learn about data management planning. Yeah. Since we have this table on the workshop, I thought maybe I'll just also share with you the other workshops that we do on a regular basis would be the data curation, data deposit workshops on the university data repository. If you're wondering what is DR-NTU data, it is actually the name of our data repository. So we have basic workshops that touches on the basic functionalities, and we have advanced workshop that touches on the more advanced functionalities. So that leads us to the research data repository. This is an interesting experience. I think this is where maybe some of you could be looking at right now. So when it comes to developing a data repository, what could be the factors of consideration? So we were looking at what options there were in 2015. So that is quite some time ago. I think if you were to look at the landscape now, you might have more choices. But back then in 2015, these were the considerations. Number 1, data residency. So where would the uploaded data be residing? So we were looking at, we want the data that are deposited in the repository to reside in the premise of the university. Okay, we don't want it to be in some other country's cloud. We want it on a campus. All right, so we have the infrastructure on campus. We have the backup infrastructure also on campus, but different locations. So the other important factor of consideration would be open source of the software of the repository solution. So when it comes to looking at the pros and cons, indeed, if you are looking at proprietary repository solutions, you don't need developers to help with the maintaining, the upgrading of the software version. But if if you are using an open source one, you don't have to pay pricey yearly subscriptions. Yeah, so there are pros and cons, all right, about this. So you may need to make an assessment about which of these will be important to you. Metadata standards is, of course, an important factor because it will affect indexing by places like Google Dataset Search, as well as the other platforms that are, for example, mining or harvesting data from data sites, DOIs, etc. So this is an important aspect, but for most of the main repository solutions, they actually take good care of the metadata standards compliance. So yeah, it is not an issue if you use any one of the better known repository solutions. Suitability for research data. So in 2015, we were looking at a few solutions, and some seem to be more suitable for research papers than research data. So we were aware of that. So we had to take that into consideration. This point about development by Harvard is because we were looking at Dataverse. In the end, we chose to use Dataverse, which is a repository solution that is developed by Harvard. So we were looking at how the software functionalities, features, security have improved over the years, and how the community of users that come from various parts of the world have helped to influence that development. So it was quite heartening to see that kind of fantastic ground-up support that is also driving the improvement of this solution. There is a Google group where you throw in any questions, someone will jump in to answer, and there is a GitHub that you can raise as a ticket for the Harvard developers to pick up and work on. So the community support was fantastic, and it still is fantastic. Okay, repository solution aside, after looking at the various solutions, we decided on one, we tested it out, and we launched it in 2017. So that was the time when we invited the NTU president then to help launch it. So if you have the opportunity to do a launching of the repository, it's good to do it in a big bang way so that it will also create some awareness. Repository user guides is something that kept us busy after, from the time we launched till even now. So we have to keep looking at what kind of information we want to put in the repository user guides in terms of advising the data depositors on how to prepare your data for deposit. So we ask them questions like, do you have any sensitive data? Please remove them. Depositing your files when how to organize it, and how do you fill out the metadata fields, when to publish it, or there are various ways to, for example, share the private URL with your reviewers, collaborators before you publish it. We say a little bit about that as well. How do you edit your published dataset? Because if you look at the last two boxes, session and version and date. After the dataset is published, should there be a genuine need to remove the files? Okay, so that is session. So we tell people, explain to people what that means. All right, then we also say a little bit about, okay, you are not deaccessioning, you're just making changes to your metadata or add files, or remove some files that will result in a version change. So we share with people how that works as well. So as a repository manager, it is extremely important to come up with very comprehensive and useful guidance for our data depositors. So we do that in our LibGuide. Yeah, so we also remind our data depositors, don't forget, when you publish a journal paper with the data set that is residing in the university repository, please remember to provide a data availability statement by including a DOI link to the data set in the university repository. A little bit about open science. Okay, so this is a new thing in terms of open science activities. I think in the Padlet, I received a question asking about how the university supports open science. Maybe I can draw on this example. There is actually a pre-registration data set in the university repository. It says it's pre-registration. So it's not about final research data. It's before the research team embarks on the data collection project. They let others know about the methods, the assumptions, the protocols that they are going to use for the data collection. So it's a pre-registration. They tell people the methods, but there's no data. So this first data set is a pre-registration record that links to the actual data in the next record. So the next record actually has got many data files in there, but it also reminds people that this data set is a result of that pre-registration. It follows closely the methods that were given in the first record. So in a way, that data repository curation also helps to support that open science that is more than just data sharing, which is right at the beginning of your research data lifecycle. You share with people your methods. This is an example of how we link up our faculty members' page to the data sets that they put in the university repository. So there is a link that says data set. If you click on that link, it brings people to the data sets that they have made available on the university repository. So I think it helps to provide some linkage there. Okay, so a little bit about this topic. I'm not sure whether you've heard of transparency and openness promotion guidelines. In short, is TOP. So I think what I would like to share with you is that there are more and more journal publishers who are trying to up their standard in terms of adopting open science practices. So if it's not implemented, that means the journal does not say anything about data availability statements, for example. But when it comes to level 3, which is the most stringent level, the journals might say that your data must be made available in a trusted repository. Your code and materials, must also be made available in a trusted repository. And for some journals, they even say that you must have pre-registration. All right, the last one is very specific to registered reports. So there is really, a big movement out there to drive the stringency and the awareness of adopting open science practices. So this is a TOP factor that is some kind of a scoring across the journals that say a little bit about whether they are requiring which level in terms of data citation, data transparency, etc. So it's some scoring. So journals are not just having journal impact factors, but they are now getting some TOP factors as well. So okay, a little bit about registries. So for NTU data repository is registered in RE3 data. If you are working on the repository, once you have built it up, you've got some published data sets, you can start looking at that direction to have it up registered in the registries. A little bit about this tool, which is quite interesting. It says a little bit about how fair your data sets are. So you can test it out if you have a data set, whether it's on your upcoming repository or on your existing repository or somebody else's repository. Go try out the FAIR data self-assessment tool. Fill out the questionnaire. For example, FAIR is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. I think most of you know that. So for findable, there is this list of questions that ask whether the data sets have got identifiers. So if it's a DOI, you click, and so on and so forth. So at the end of answering that questionnaire about the various questions pertaining findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, you get a scoring bar. Then you see how well your data set is doing in terms of fairness. Okay, this is the part where I was saying it is also a biggest challenge as we move forward in terms of open science and data sharing. So I think for open science, there are more and more journals looking at giving out open science badges. So for example, psychological science from APS, Association for Psychological Science, is giving out these various badges. And in this example, this journal article has got the registered badge, open data badge, and even the open materials badge. So it's not just psychology, but let us look at this IEEE Explore IEEE article. So there's an example here. It says code reviewed. So when you click on code reviewed, it brings you to a separate platforms that allows you to interact with the codes on that separate platform. Okay, and then this is the next example for ACM. They have their own badges as well. Okay, so last but not least, I think I'll wrap up by saying that for the NTU's open science endeavors, as mentioned earlier, we are pursuing our certification for data repository. So hopefully we can say a little bit about our repository as a trusted repository. We hope to roll out the RDM e-learning next year. We hope to get some insights from the DMP submissions data analysis to help us further our plans. And we are also looking at coming up with a separate closed repository for sensitive research data. And of course, open science is the next, it's a much broader thing that we are looking at right now. So with that, I thank you very much. Cik Ramla, you are muted.
Okay, sorry for that. Thank you very
No
much
worries.
to Ms. Go for such an insightful presentation. I believe we have learned a lot from the sharing session. Let us move now to the Q&A session. It seems that we have received a lot of questions from our participants. Let me read them one by one. The first question is from Encik Muhammad Ikhwan Ismail. So the question is, how did NTU start the RDM services? With top-down or down-top approach? And which department initiated this idea or service?
Thanks very much for the question. So, it is, I would say we started with top-down. There was a group that was looking at integrity, research integrity. So the group is looking at best practices, and library has a representation in that group discussion. And the library said that let us volunteer to find out a little bit more about what other universities are doing for research data management pertaining research integrity. So we started to look at research data policies, data management plans, and we put forward the proposal that the university to consider these two things, and it started from there. Yeah.
Thank you for the answer, Ms. Go. Okay, second question is from Siti Wahida. What is the difference between research data management and research data services or support?
Okay. Thanks for the question. Actually, they mean the same thing to us. So you can choose to call yourself research data management support or research data support. So in some universities that we have also looked at, the research data services might also extend to, for example, acquisition of research data sets. Yeah. So the acquisition and the management of those purchased data sets. So I think regardless of the name, you choose one that you think is most appropriate, and then just let people know of the services surrounding what you want to provide, so that people are clear. The name is interchangeably used. Yeah.
Okay, the next question is from Mr. Muhammad Kamal. Do NTU take into account data sharing practices as part of tenure or promotion evaluation among the researchers?
I think that would be something that we would aspire to look at. And because open science is starting to give out badges, and we have also come up with an open science team. So we would be giving out, we are working with the Research Integrity Office to give out research grants on the theme of open science. And I think we are also looking at what some of the European and US universities are doing in terms of giving out open science awards to people who practice open science in a very big way, in a very inspiring way. So I think we could be looking at how to provide that recognition, but not yet in the promotion and tenure exercises. Not yet at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ko. The next question is from Mr. Ikhwan Ismail again. Which one is come first based on NTU experience between, is it services or policy?
Okay. So for NTU, we started with a policy first, but as we plan for the implementation of the policy, we have to quickly put together a team to provide the necessary services. So yeah, that is the case for us.
Okay. Next question, Miss Go. This one, we took it from Slido earlier. Okay, what are the best activities or program to start RDM in academic libraries?
Okay, so best activities or program to start RDM in academic libraries. Okay, so for NTU library, when we were looking at this, I think we were doing a few things at that time. So one of them is to maybe upskill library staff in regard to this. So we invited some experts over to conduct workshops for us to walk through some of the what other universities are doing. We when we have the policy, we try to talk about them, share a little bit more in depth with library staff. But in addition to upskilling library staff, best activities or programs to start RDM. Yeah, I think we actually were riding on the International Open Access Week, which we have been conducting events. So we actually tuned to messages such as open access data sharing, and invited people to our faculty members who might be well versed in this to share a little bit about their data sharing experience. And when we rolled out the data repository, we actually invited people who have shared the data in our repository to talk a little bit about their experience in preparation, their data sets, and how they link it to other places such as the subject-specific repositories or even the GitHub. So I think it's about having various kinds of activities outside the library to engage the data producers, as well as within the library to also that we can all speak the same language.
I see. Is the program that you mentioned earlier will be open to all?
Oh, yeah. For in the past 2 years or so, when the activities are online, yeah, we make it free for all. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Good to hear that.
Yeah.
We surely are going to attend. Okay. Miss Go, I think
Most
this is a
welcome.
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is a question from our secretariat, Adila. Was the DMP designed by your university or by IT department? I think is it library or IT department that designed the DMP?
Yeah, so we were very lucky to have the opportunity to put together the first draft of the DMP template, we as in the library, because we volunteered to do some landscape investigation to see what are the best practices, standards, etc. So we volunteered to do the template after the committee says that let's do it. Yeah, so we drafted something, but it was floated around to the various stakeholders to ask for feedback, research support office, the research integrity officer. Yeah, so there were various parties who gave feedback. We put together a draft, and then we tested it on various representatives from various disciplines to seek their feedback as well. So we did some more fine tuning before we rolled it out.
Thank you very much for the answer, Ms. Go. We would like to apologize for not being able to answer all your questions due to the limitation of time available. I think we have come to the end of our webinar. Again, on behalf of the organizing committee at USM Library, We would like to express our fullest thanks to all viewers, especially to our speakers for spending your valuable time with all of us this morning. And we want to apologize as well for any inconvenience during this session. Before we end, don't forget to fill in our e-feedback form to get e-certificate and CPD points for USM staff. Again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page for the latest updates and upcoming events. With that note, thank you once again. See you next time. Take care, everyone. Stay safe and healthy. Wassalam.
Thank you.